Got it just in time. I was, I always talk about the process of clicking buttons and making sure that things are laid out a certain way. Morning, Alex. Uh, you missed it last night. We were on for about an hour and 15 minutes. We did a bit of a power hour when I got back in town. It was Maddie. It was Jared. It was Nick. It was myself. And yeah, it kind of in true soccer over there fashion went off the rails a little bit. I know you're shocked. But we did, Alex, talk about the latest at Newcastle and lawsuits and things like that. And we might bring that back up again this morning for those that missed last night. But John, hear you there. It's a Thursday, so Thursday thoughts. Whatever's on your table, whatever's on your mind, and go ahead and bring it in. Niko Moreno set to join us as always at 10:30 to get the Pacific perspective on things. And in between now and 10:30 or 10:35 or so for the last half hour of the show, we'll go over all the news of the day, get you ready for what's going on, what we might have missed yesterday, what we didn't have the chance to talk about yesterday, and updating some things. And yeah, Minnesota. Yeah, we'll get into Minnesota, and I know that Minnesota is turning into our early season punching bag. I think rightfully so, that they deserve all this attention for what isn't going on. And there's a pretty good article from Jerry Zagoda up at the Star Trib up in Minneapolis, and we'll go through everything. And there's some up-to-dated quotes. Morning, Michael. Morning, Tom. And can't thank you guys enough that were on with us last night, hanging out in the Twitch pitch, and back at it again this morning. So we do have a bit of an advancement for those of you that missed it last night. There's another name in the mix for Thiago Almada and Atletico Madrid. And we've discussed that process of what has to go down and what might be going on. Morning, Don Star. First time back in a long time. So glad to have you back, Don Star. 4Card, good morning. And so we'll introduce the new name into the process for Thiago Almada and Atletico Madrid. And the signing, since we didn't get the chance to talk about it yesterday a whole lot, Bartosz Slisz is now in. Polish Power. Bartosz Slisz is now in from Legia Warsaw. Very classy thing that Legia Warsaw did on the 280-character app on their particular account. They said, take care of our boy. And I thought that was very classy, very cool. So Bartosz Slisz, he posted the 20-second message about looking forward to seeing the 17s, and I know that the 17s, are looking forward to seeing Bartosz Slisz in the midfield. We got into last night with Slisz coming in, what the anticipated starting 11s were from all of your minds and what you were looking at in the midfield. And for those of you who missed it once again, it's just the addition of a name 4Card. I mean, it's competition. And literally, we can do this in about 45 seconds. So we know the process that is involved in the possibility / whatever when it comes to Thiago Almada moving from Atlanta United to Atletico Madrid. We know the price tag ish, 22 to 25 million euro. And right now, and it was the way that it was phrased, it was not. I mean, it was the writer of the article probably that said that Atlanta United would be doing a favor, because we all know, and we've been sitting here saying, okay, so we're looking at a $30 million price tag. But when you see something like that, and the idea of 22 to 25 being the number that was announced by AS overseas, you're thinking, okay, then there should be a percentage of the pass that's attached. And that would make sense. So it would be Atlanta United with whatever price they attach to Thiago Almada. Then in turn, yeah, and that's the thing. It's the sell-on that would be like, my guess is 15%, maybe 20, depending on how far away you get from 30. So if you look at it, I mean, just straight up percentages. If we're looking at 30, but then it gets into the 22 to 25, 5 over 30 is 1/6. So that would be like 16.7%. So at 25, you're looking at maybe 15%. The further away you get from 25, you're looking closer to 20. So I would probably say, just like I said, just taking the math that's on the table and extrapolating it, and trying to do math early in a show, is always very difficult. I would say if you're looking at 30 as your base price, then the more you work backwards, just literally take that percentage and work it over. So 15% away from 30, something like that. That would be my guess. If you're at 25, it would be 16.7%. So 1/6 of it, 17%, somewhere between 15 and 20% on the sell on. So that would be my guess. Like I said, we're just doing basic math and extrapolating. But remember the situation. Angel Correa has to go from Atletico Madrid to the league that we neither really discuss a whole deal or acknowledge, even though we do have some news out of it this morning. We don't acknowledge the matches or when they're played on whatever network it's on and whatever time. It's the league in the Middle East, the new one, where they're spending a lot of money. Correa has to go from Atletico Madrid to that league. He shares representation with Thiago Almada. And so Thiago Almada has said in a rapid-fire interview with Olay that's been posted, it's making the rounds. You can look it up on the 280-character app. Rapid-fire, who'd you like to play for? He says Atletico Madrid. So, all right, you move him to Atletico Madrid for whatever, sell-on percentage, something in there. So I would probably say, like I said, 15% would be the sell-on idea the further away you get from 30 million. But yesterday it was announced Mateo Moreno, who has a fair poke of folks that follow him on the 280-character app. Basically 260,000 followers working at Relevo. And then he also works at SOS Fanta. So Relevo and SOS Fanta for Mateo Moreno, who has about 260,000 followers on the 280-character app. Mateo Moreno announced yesterday on his particular account that there is another name that could be in consideration in addition to Thiago Almada to go to Atletico Madrid to fill that space if Correa moves. And it would be Moise Kean. And last night, if you missed it, I would suggest going back and listening to the Power Hour, specifically the last half, when Nick came in and we discussed Moise Kean's current situation. Nick admitted that Ken needed to have a change of scenery, but didn't necessarily think that Atleti would be the place for that to happen. But go back and listen to the show last night. So Moise Kean now being introduced into the conversation by Mateo Moreno about Thiago Almada and Atletico Madrid. But once again, remember the moving pieces. Angel Correa has to go to the Middle East. Same agent, Correa and Thiago Almada. That would create the opening, and there were discussions earlier in the week about other players who'd been signed, and that would wipe out the whole thing, but nothing moved from that one rumor. So Correa out, Almada in, same representation, but Moise Kean is now being introduced into the conversation. So Kean and Almada for the open space should it happen to Atletico Madrid. So that's where we were with the conversation and the update with Thiago Almada yesterday. Somewhere in there. So that's where we stand. I will do the public service and check out and see if there is anything new by using that particular search term. And we will see what's going on when it comes to the latest on Thiago Almada. Let's see, under 23s, hotel room in Venezuela, posted by Fox Sports Argentina, already installed in Venezuela this Sunday. The pre-Olympic championships will begin. Thiago Almada shared an image of the hotel. So pre-Olympic competition, a lot of it, the update seems to be that Thiago Almada has posted a picture of them in the hotel room in Venezuela getting ready for the pre-Olympic tournament. But once again, Mateo Moreno, Moise Kean, and Thiago Almada are the potentials if Correa leaves. So that's our update. Another name added to the mix. So that's where we are with Thiago Almada and possibilities of him heading over to the league over there with the La Liga. Goodness gracious. Alex, am I the only one who doesn't care if they get 15 million or 40 million? Doesn't change a thing with the rest of the cap. And remember, the league gets their cut too. But but once again, you want to be somewhat financially viable in that particular situation. I mean, yeah, you picked up a fantastic talent, but at the same time, the way that the marketplace works, you want to make sure that you get that particular, fantastic talent. You want to get the fee that's attached to it. You want it to be 50. You want it to be closer to 40 than closer to 15. So you do want to be rewarded in quotation marks for what you were able to do, and be able to take that money, reinvest it, and continue to reinvest and reload and reload and reload. And that's just how things are. Yeah. So, and Tom mentioning that particular league, he says, "Oh, you mean the league that everybody's realizing was a mistake to play for, now is begging to come back? LOL, idiots." Yes, that one, that league. Like I said, we do have news out of that league this morning. Coaches that we thought were going to be in danger of being unemployed got contract extensions. So we'll get into that. We do have the Jordan Henderson update there as well. All those kinds of things. Like I said, we will treat that league for its news value. We ain't going to cover it, and we ain't going to really sit there and say, okay, yeah, if you want to watch it, go watch it, because I'm not going to condone or endorse that particular league and everything that's attached to it. So, yes, that league, Tom, that league in particular. And Ricky, yes, it is Sleesh season. Say that. It is going to be Sleesh season. Sleesh. Bartosz Sleesh. And so I guess if he does something positive, is it Sleeshy? Just saying. Emilio, he says, I'm in the minority, but I'm okay with 22 and a sell-on. There's only 2 real windows left, and I'm philosophically with Alex. To be sure I'm understanding correctly, Tom, that money could only be used for other DPs, not into the general pool for other players. Is that correct? My understanding my understanding is that it goes into the general pool, but it does make sense that it is reinvested into other DPs and such. I've always thought that the money went into the general pool. Like I said, I could be wrong, but I've always thought that money that you get in transfers while the league gets their cut, you get to do with the rest whatever you need. I've always thought it went to the general pool. It makes sense that it's reinvested into those DPs to bring in all that money, and it makes sense that, okay, so we're bringing in X amount of dollars, let's go find the next big thing, and so you're going to spend a chunk of that on the next big thing anyway. So, like I said, my interpretation is, my understanding is that it was okay to go to the general population, but yeah, naturally you would reinvest it into other DPs. So that, like I said, that's me and my thought pattern on it. Yeah, it does change. They get GAM on some of the profit, yeah, and the league does too. So David says, I think it does change what they get in the cap. Dawn Star, Atlanta United transfer window, looking pretty good right now. So let's see if we can. And Santi Sosa, by the way, was officially introduced at Rossing for the loans. All right, so let's see if we can piece together the outs and the ins. Out, it was Hosechu, who's looking for a home, Santi Sosa, who's at Rossing, Franco Ibarra, Rosario Central, Miguel Berry, who was signed to a 2-year deal with LA Galaxy. I'm trying to think of who else I may have missed. Oh man, I'm trying to think of the others, but a lot of and so you've got the midfield that's outbound, and so inbound you end up with, and Miles obviously outbound. So outbound was that. Inbound, Stian Gregerson, who is still working on completing the paperwork for the visa so he can practice on his own and condition. He just can't play with everybody else right now. Then you have Sleesh. You have Derek Williams at the back celebrating a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Derek Williams. You've got, man, I am just blanking out this morning. I mean, I know this is going to make for once again. It's going to make for fantastic audio. But Gregerson, Sleesh, yeah, well, visa jail. That's probably the best way to phrase it. Working on Atlanta United. So, all right, what did I miss on the ins? The inbounds. Derek Williams in. Let's see. Dax McCarty in. We got some stuff on Dax coming up in just a little bit. And yeah, so those are the ones that, and plus the homegrowns, Luke Brennan's deal, Nick Firmino signs. So that's what you're getting there with the inbounds. So detail. No, I don't. It's like you click on something and the Cohen and net. Thank you very much, Cohen and net. Thank you. All right, so those are your inbounds, and once again, the outbounds we talked about with Sosa, Ibarra, Miles, and Hosechu, Amar Sejdic, and I think I'm close on the ones that are out the door. My brain, I'm still trying to recover from spending 10 hours in a car over a 2-day period. And I apologize for that. That was I had to go to Meridian, Mississippi quickly yesterday, spend some time there, overnight there. That's why there wasn't a morning show. Okay, so who is not here? Clement Diop, Vicente Reyes, Miles Robinson, Purata is out, Gutman is gone, Santi Sosa is officially out and loaned, Ibarra's out and loaned, Sejdic is not back, Ozzy Alonso retired, Hosechu's looking for a home. Let's see, and I think that's it. And Jackson Conway's gone. So that's what you're looking at from 23 to 24. So a lot of outs, and you're looking right now at maybe a couple of other places, maybe another couple of other, maybe some other depth pieces. Keep an eye on that stuff. But Derek Williams in at center back. Noah Cobb is in on a deal. Efren Morales and Aiden McFadden back in camp. Centeno is up. William Boz here for a full training camp. Michael Dax McCarty. Like I said, we got some interesting stuff on Dax if you missed it last night. Aiden Torres is hanging out. That's going to be a fun watch to see him learn from Derek Williams, Dax McCarty, and all the other experienced players. And so that's where we are with 23 and 24. Maybe another piece here, there, in Cohen. Maybe another piece here and there, but we'll see. Let's see. Boca said this week, according to Alex, that when selling a DP, none of that profit is converted to Gamertan. Thank you. Selling a DP. Got it. All right. So DP money's only for DPs. Thank you, Forecard. And Alex said if it isn't GAM, it's TAM, then it isn't expanding the cap. Yes, there you go. Yes. And see, I wanted to try to see how many of it slipped in. A little Polish power. Polish hammer, Ivan Putski. Shows you my target demo and what I watched when I was growing up. Polish hammer, Bartosz Slisz. I think that can work. A little Polish power, a little Polish hammer. I think that would absolutely work. No GAM from selling DPs. Did we get a sell on with Almiron? I want to say that we did, but it was small. Newcastle sale. Let me check real quick. The Miguel Almiron record transfer. Specific fee was not released, reported to be 27. And over Davies. So let's see. It looks like it was straight up 27. Does not look like there was a sell on, but I thought there was. And it was like really small. 5.5-year deal. No, I don't want to join the Bleacher Report list. I got to go hang out with. You got to go hang out with Rafa Benitez. I don't see anything with a sell on, at least in the early notifications. I don't think there was a sell on attached, even though I thought there was a small one. It doesn't look like there was officially. And so no GAM to selling DPs. See, now we got folks remembering Ivan Putski. There you go. So Abby's got to go through the flag list, and now you've got to get Poland. That is correct. Yes, Chief J. Strongbow. Remember him too. And Norway. One more move hoped for. And that might, is it a backup? You wonder what you're hunting for. And coming in early this morning, Nick Leafy. Morning, Nick.
Wait, what's happening?
We're going over the roster moves, ins and outs for Atlanta United, recognizing that Stian Gregerson and the Polish hammer, Bartosz Slisz, might be in visa jail for a while, at least, training off to the side, watching everybody else with the reindeer games, but they're at least in. And so we were looking at the ins and the outs, and Tom Russo, the Airborne DJ, saying that Carlos Bocanegra said one more move is hoped for here in this window. So where could that be, thinking out loud, considering all of the ins and outs that we've experienced? Is it up top? Is it somebody else at the back to help Noah Cobb, Efren Morales, Aiden Torres learn? Where do you think it would be?
The most practical, I think, would be on the back end of the formation. That's where it would make the most sense to me. But I don't think they would do any sort of sleight of hand when it comes to Almada's situation. I think you're pretty stacked up at the top. So I would have to say it would be on the back end. I think that's where you've had the most challenging points for the past couple of years has been defensive depth. You've been able to bring up, some of the young kids to play, but I wouldn't, be beyond the idea that they would have one more depth piece coming in just to make sure everything is all well,
Yeah, and so and Abby's like maybe a defensive midfielder somewhere in there. Once again, just to help the middle with Efren Morales, Noah Cobb, Aiden Torres, help them learn as well. You've got Derek Williams in already, and you've got Stian Gregerson once he gets out of visa jail to anchor the back line at 6'4". I have not gotten into opening kickoff this morning, and it's traditionally here there's a topic that we might think about and go, well, that it you don't have any ideas for opening kickoff, and you're kind of sitting there wondering, okay, what in the wide world of sports do I talk about to start the show? And everybody wanted to get into the Thiago Almada discussion after I mentioned the Moise Kean addition to probably being a part of the discussion at Atletico Madrid if Correa leaves and goes to the Middle East. And I said, go listen to last night's show because you went into what was going on with Moise Kean and his idea. And I want to send folks to last night to where you analyzed Moise Kean and his current situation. But opening kickoff this morning, we're going to go to Minnesota because Jerry Zgoda wrote a piece at the Star Trib. And so here's and there's also a new quote from Will Trapp about all this. Minnesota United has started a season of transition, awaiting the arrival of its new sporting director, the hiring of a new head coach, and again starting without its best player, all with the regular season opener, now technically 38 days away. Zgoda wrote it yesterday at 39. Star midfielder Emmanuel Reynoso did not report for the first 2 days of preseason training Monday and Tuesday, repeating what he did a year ago. Remained away until mid-May because of what he called a family matter involving his young daughter. Two other Loons players, Franco Fragapane and Tani Oluwaseyi, are both out of country following the process to receive their immigration green cards, the club said. Loons trained without all three, led by interim head coach Cameron Knowles. So for those of you that may not remember, Knowles took over as the interim coach from interim coach Sean McCauley. Sean McCauley left after coaching the last couple of matches last year, after they dismissed Adrian Heath with a handful of matches to go and they weren't going to make the playoffs. They went ahead and fired him before the end of the season, and nothing was going to change, so you went ahead and dismissed him anyway. Sean McCauley was the interim. They were cool with that, cool with the interim being the coach coming into this season with McCauley. But a couple of weeks ago, Sean McCauley was like, I'm out. So the interim coach is gone, and he ended up being the new head coach in Indy 11 and USL Championship. So now Cameron Knowles is the interim to the interim. He's the new substitute teacher. And, he became the only McCauley was the second head coach. Adrian Heath was the only coach that the Loons ever had. And then now Cameron Knowles is in. They hired Khalid El Ahmad from Barnsley in November, but are still awaiting his immigration clearance and his arrival after he fulfilled his obligations with Barnsley last month. He's expected to arrive in Minnesota next week, after it was said that he was going to arrive this week when the team trains in Tucson, Arizona, next week. El Ahmad's going to hire the new coach. Knowles and the Loons' second-team coaches will carry on until that decision is made. Quoting Knowles from the Jerry Zagota piece, the expectations don't change. Is the situation unexpected? Sure it is. We can control that. We can't control that, but we can control every day that we come in here and train. And he mentions expectations. Listen, we focus on the players who are here. We're entrusted with developing all the players here, the 28 guys who are on the field together. Will Trapp, who re-signed during the offseason, and sometimes when I look at that word, re-signed, I have to remember that it's re-signed, not resigned, because sometimes I look at it funny. Trapp called Reynoso's absence, quote, that elephant in the room we can talk about at another time, end quote. He echoed Knowles' message about controlling what you can. He says, I know it sounds like a broken record, but when there's flux and a lot of change and turnover, one constant is what you do have control over. Here are the non-negotiables: showing up on time, giving your best effort, raise the standards. Knowles says he talks regularly to El Ahmad, who's back home in Sweden. Apparently, they do a lot of things remotely. Trapp has exchanged messages with Reynoso during the offseason. A couple messages here and there. It's difficult. Some people literally unplug. It was one of those happy holidays, Merry Christmas things. Nothing beyond that. Trapp and the Loons' other players haven't connected with their new boss, El Ahmad, yet. He really wants to do the first meetings to be in person, according to Will Trapp. You can do Zoom meetings, but you don't always get that same tactile feel that you do speaking face-to-face with someone. I respect that a lot. When he does meet up with the group, we'll be excited because everyone is itching to meet him and hear his thoughts and his ideas about pushing things forward. The Loons also acquired Alejandro Braun on a one-year loan from Costa Rica's Premier Division, 3 call-ups with the national team. So that is Jerry Zagota from the Minnesota Minneapolis Star-Tribune. On the current situation, Nick, in Minneapolis, and there seem to be a lot of situations, Nick, in Minneapolis right now.
Bad decisions have their own gravitational pull, right? So they just seem to attract other bad decisions. It's this weird magnetic effect. And I preach constantly to people, whether in a consulting role or whether in, just general life choices, that there is nothing that can trigger an avalanche effect like one stupid rushed decision. That doesn't mean it's non-recoverable, but it can snowball out of control very, very, very quickly. The decision to remove Adrian Heath when they did, I'm not mad at the fact that they made the choice to move on from Adrian Heath. It was time.
Yeah.
That when they elected to pull the trigger on that, though, it did not help anything or anyone. There are organizations that can make that kind of move because everything else in the org is in alignment. I hate these corporate terms, but in this case, it really does work. When your leadership team is in alignment, meaning that from the chief executive down through the decision-making tree, everyone says, okay, look, we have the same strategic outlook. Okay. And so, strategy is essentially how we win, right? We win by doing X. Everything below that is tactical, right? There is no strategy with Minnesota United. None. Zero. Atlanta, you can say Atlanta under Darren Eales, their strategy was to win on the field, take emerging South American talent, raise the value, win trophies, and sell, right? So twofold, we win economically when we sell the players. We win on the field when these players reach, their, the perceived skill level, the perceived ceiling that they can reach here.
Yep.
Think about Minnesota for a moment. You can disagree with what Darren Eales was doing. They seem to have changed course on that now, over at the facility, and that's fine. That's great. Strategies change. They should. You shouldn't be stagnant and fall into the gravity of success. But look at Minnesota. There's no strategy. None. There's not even tactical awareness. When you have all tactics and no strategy, all you do is you run yourself ragged. You're in constant triage mode, right? Where it's just go, 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 go. Where are we going? I don't know, but we're going, go, 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 go. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, how do we improve? We don't know. Go, 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 go. And that's what's happening right now up in Minnesota. They have a team of players. Some players aren't showing up. They have an interim manager. Mm-hmm. You have an executive who is dogmatically locking himself in by saying, I'm only going to speak to you guys when I can do so in person. That there's nothing good that comes from that. At some point, you just have to bite the bullet and say, okay, guys, the timeline got a little wacky. Really would have loved to have been able to have, been up front and, right 6 feet away from you guys to have these conversations. Not the case, but let me lay out right now what's happening with us, where we're going, what we're doing, and how we could convince the fans that we have a remote clue as to what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't care about what the old world of sports was. Oh, well, this club represents our neighborhood. It's not the day. This club was founded by the longshoremen who got it's done. These are multinational conglomerates now. These are teams that are owned by former CEOs and CEOs, captains of industry, millionaires and billionaires, and they are pitching a product and service, and we are the consumers of those products and those services. You have to appease that client base. You have to appease those customers. If you don't, they will not spend with you. They will not spend with you. And if they won't spend with you, they're not going to buy. They're not going to invest, right? And how does a sports fan invest? Not by buying shirts. That's fine. You do a rev share split. You do a rev share split with Adidas in this situation. Okay. You can buy t-shirts and all that. You're splitting that with Fanatics. Butts in seats.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Butts and seats. That money goes right to you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The butts and seats, the eyeballs that tune in when you're on television. All right. That revenue, that revenue goes to you, or you can split with media partners, but that leads to more advertisers. More advertisers means to more incoming money. More incoming money means more eyeballs, right? Because your branding is going to be more places. The larger your brand, the more attractive it is for other players to come and want to be a part of your organization. It's not just convincing people from Europe to come here. You blew up your academy, Minnesota. So now kids are like, well, why the hell would I come play for you? Why? I've got teams all around this region, because if you're in the Midwest, baby, driving 12 hours ain't nothing, right? 12 hours down the road, there are a couple teams that would be more than happy to have my skill set amongst their ranks. That's who I want to go for. You are blowing up your brand. You're blowing up your brand. And that's your brand now is dysfunction. Your brand now is cluelessness. It's cheapness. It's everything that is wrong with big time athletics when you have a lot of money and very, very tight purse strings. All right. You have to invest in your product. You have to invest in leadership. It's not just investing on the field. We've seen in American football what happens when you only invest on the product on the field and nothing in the leadership category. Those paper tiger teams that fall apart. We've seen it in soccer where you have these unbelievably like just ultimate team rosters that fall apart because they spend a ton of money with 0 cents, Chelsea. And you have, it just, there's no strategy. Look at Southwest. And I know I'm rambling right now, but I need people to follow me here.
Yeah.
When we talk about strategy, right? Look at Southwest. Southwest, when they first came into being, there were airlines all over the place. They flew all over the world, right? Delta and then you had United and American, and you could get on a plane in Topeka, Kansas, and you could be in Madrid, in a very short period of time. So why the hell do we need another airline? And so you have these investors who are talking to the founder of Southwest, and they say, "How do you plan on winning? Building a winning organization?" And he said, "We are going to be the Greyhound of the skies. That's it. We're going to be the Greyhound of the skies. We're going to fly local routes. We're going to fly routes domestically, cheaply, in a way that is completely different from Delta, United, and American. We're not worrying about going to Madrid. We're not worrying about going to France, wherever else. We are going to be the Greyhound of the skies." And they have built a very successful model of that. Are there pitfalls to that model? Yes, but they've been very successful, right? You must have a governing strategy that provides that lighthouse, way off in the distance. We're going to that point, okay? And we may go left, we may go right. The conditions between point A and point B may dictate that we have to take this very circuitous path to get there, but we know where we're going. And Minnesota United, and not just Minnesota United, but there are several other teams in this league that have the same challenge. They have no damn strategy. Zero. You can disagree with what Darren was doing, okay? And the players that they brought in and whether they worked or whether they didn't. You have trophies in your trophy case that I would say that, it's not just a 1 or a 0. It's not binary. That there was probably more success than there was failure. The problem is that bitterness toward the end of Darren's run, that sort of fall off, that didn't help anyone. That kind of left, from a perception standpoint, probably not the best perception of how the org was ran. Mm-hmm. But would you take being an Atlanta United fan right now over a bunch of other teams in this league?
Ooh.
Probably so. For all the hype that Philly gets, do they have an MLS Cup?
I believe the answer to that is no.
Okay. What about Red Bulls? They won how many supporter shields?
They got a couple of pie plates, yeah.
Right. They would love to have MLS Cup sitting in their coffers. They don't. Orlando would love to have that. Miami would love to be able to have, been able to make the playoffs, go on a run and hoist the MLS Cup. They would love that, right? Mm-hmm. We know what the lighthouse is in this. We know how to build an org that is sustainable financially, reinvest on field and off field. And you see how they're bringing in talent, right? And so both from a leadership perspective and an on-field perspective, none of that's happening in Minnesota. None. Look at LAFC. LAFC had Chiellini, whose joints were falling up. They were imploding like the friggin' Titanic sub. And what happens? He leaves the field and he goes right in to their front office. He joins the coaching ranks, right? So now he's like working with youth talent there. Okay. That is an org with a strategy. Look up in Carson. right? What do the Galaxy have right now? We need to buy players. Something.
We need to drop 8 figures on players like now.
Right. And now look at it's mind bending. The chasm that has developed between LAFC and the Galaxy. They have no philosophy. All right. And in chaos, there's opportunity. And in this chaos, there are players who are going to take advantage of that opportunity and make a hell of a lot of money. And they're not going to have a lot to show for it when it's done.
Mm-mm. And I apologized a little bit for having Minnesota United as a punching bag to start the season. But it has to be, we have to tell stories like this here on the show. So folks will get how, yes, approaches can be different, but your goal should be to advance in an MLS season as far as possible, or win a trophy in an adjunct competition, whether it's Open Cup or Leagues Cup, what have you. Right now, with Minnesota United, they are on the verge of being a cautionary tale about how not to do things. They're already how not to do things, but they haven't played a game yet where you're talking about wins and losses. They don't have a coach. They do not have a full-time head coach. You are on your second substitute teacher right now. You thought that first substitute teacher, you were cool with that first substitute? That sub left your school, man. Left your school to get a gig being a teacher at a middle school by comparison. If you're saying high school, then it's the next level down. And you've got your second substitute teacher in there right now. Your principal is in another blanking country, and he's trying to run the school virtually. He's in another country. You say he's in another state, whatever. But your principal is in another state trying to run the school because he can't come into your state right now for some reason. That's what you have, a principal trying to run a school from another location, and your second substitute teacher for your class of your discovery program. This is not good.
No.
And you have 38 days before your season starts, and this
Correct.
is your situation.
38 days. 38 days.
We ain't met him yet, but he sounds great.
You are going to have the most Mickey Mouse system on earth in order, like break it. Like in the Marines, we had a statement for people who were like really slow to pick up on instructions and orders and like how to execute certain things. We say, look, for Lance Corporal X, you got to break it down Barney style, man. You got to break it down Barney style. Like, like, I love you. Like you really have to break it down to its like simplest form in order to teach these people how to like function normally.
Yeah.
And why are we harping on Minnesota? And I get that some of the people may be like, Jesus, they keep railing on Minnesota. Why is this happening? Because if you look at any of the leagues around the world that are top heavy, right? Ligue 1, Bundesliga, the Prem, thank God, at least has 4 or 5 teams that are competent.
Right.
And the rest of them are just kind of like Little Mac and Mike Tyson's Punch Out. They're just jumping, trying to land one hit when they can.
Yep.
Serie A is, back to having just big boys. And, you have an Atalanta who will come in to try to be, fiscally sustainable and jump up and punch people when they can. But you end up in these situations, especially like Bundesliga, where you have you have everyone else and maybe 2 or 3 teams up top that are worth anything.
Yeah.
And that happens when people stop caring about the insanity with the smaller clubs. If you just say, look, that's those smaller, stupid clubs, who cares? Well, like, just let's focus on the winners, baby. That's how you get to where NASL was, where you had the Cosmos, the Aztecs, and a couple of other people who were like competent and well-funded. And then everyone else just eventually just got out of the business. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You had a, in Bundesliga, you have three teams that are competent. They all sell their players to the top cat. And that's why you have Bayern, like you have a full season of games and Bayern Munich wins.
Yep.
Like that. It's just, it is what it is. Yeah. Is that very exciting for anyone? Like who's your favorite team? Bayern. Awesome.
Yep.
It's a very boring year for you then. And for Bayern fans, it's more of just like, okay, how are we going to lose Champions League this year? Like that's it. That's all they can focus on. You have to have and at least a minor amount of attention paid to the Nimrods at the bottom of the table and why they're not successful. You should study that. You should study why they're not successful. As much as we study why people win, we also have to study why people lose. Okay? Studying winning is very, very important. And it's one thing, not just to study people who win in a game, but who consistently win. Mm-hmm. Very important. But you also have to study why people lose, right? Like, why do these people keep losing? Well, finances are this and that. Okay, well, why are your finances trash? Well, because, we made some bad signings. Okay, why did you make bad signings? Well, because we took a gamble on these players. Okay, why did you take the gamble? Because we have to convince people to come play in Minnesota. All right, now we're getting somewhere, which means that if you're having trouble convincing people to come to Minnesota, then you have to make sure everything else around you is running in tip-top condition. So that way the location, which is automatically, and I love Minnesota. A person who's like a brother to me, he and his wife live like right outside of Minneapolis, went up there and had a blast. Minnesota is an amazing, beautiful state. Minneapolis is an awesome city.
Except in the summer where the mosquito is the state bird.
Correct. But you have to convince someone that -9 is not soul crushing.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
You have to convince someone that -9 is not soul crushing, which means that everything else around has to be tip top and first class. Mm-hmm. You don't have that. You are running your organization like the Oakland Athletics. Oh. And that is a you problem. That's not Major League Soccer. That's not any other team's fault. That's your fault. You have the same access to spending as everyone else in this league. You elect not to do it. You fire managers at the wrong time and make your situation so poor that your interim manager, who should be thirsty for that first team leadership opportunity, says, I'm going to a lower league to lead a group of players instead of staying on board here. That should tell you how toxic and poisonous that situation in Minnesota is. And we as a league need to pay attention to that, because what happens to one eventually happens to all. So you need to make sure that those idiots get straightened out, so that way we can make sure that other ownership groups around the league who start displaying the same symptoms as these chuckleheads are routed out and replaced with owners who have a clue as to what to do with their money.
Nick's on fire this morning. Business 101, but it's important.
It's one thing to say that you don't care, right? If they were to open like, look, this is just not our primary focus, and we're, it is what it is. You're not going to say that though, because you have season ticket holders. You need to keep them. But we're trying to win, but we're doing it at our pace. Okay, good. My bank account is operating at my pace too, and this says that I don't need to renew season tickets. So I mean, yeah. we could have this both ways. You're on your timeline and I'm on mine.
Yep.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead. Read Pars.
Pars wants to know, can the league put the ownership on a performance improvement plan? You'd like to think so.
The minute you go on a performance improvement plan, you need to leave the company. The minute your supervisor puts you on a performance improvement plan, you need to leave the company.
Yeah.
Because even when your success comes, it ain't going to be your success. even if you did all the work. Supervisor's going to say, nope, I had the lead and guide. Da, 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 da. Like it's like a shot in the dark that you may be able to stay around. The minute you ended up on a PIP, get the hell out. And if they put Minnesota on a PIP, get that ownership out.
that is a vote of confidence if ever there was one, when you're putting on a PIP. Yeah. Forbes numbers in 2022, just to let everybody know. Minnesota United, when it came to the MLS franchise evaluation, and this was once again about a year ago, and so Forbes in the next couple of weeks should be coming out with their 2023 valuation. Minnesota United, middle of the pack, 16th in value out of 28 clubs in Major League Soccer, with a value of $540 million. 2022 revenue was $54 million, and their operating income was at $1 million loss.
That is poor business, baby.
Middle of the pack. So their value, $540 million, puts them just behind Crew. But like I said, this is last year's numbers. So this came out February 2nd of 2023. This is the 2022 evaluation heading into the 23 season. Minnesota United 16th at $540 million, just behind Columbus Crew at who are 15th at $550, ahead of Red Bulls, who are 17th at $525. Nashville is 18 at $500. The Revs, and we've got news with the Revs coming up in just a bit. Niko Moreno joining us around 10:30, 10:35. Revs were 19th at $475. Then you go RSL, you go San Jose, RSL, Houston, Chicago, Orlando, Vancouver, Dallas, CF Montreal, and dead last was Colorado at $350 million valuation. 2022 revenue for the Rapids at $33 million. Operating income at a $5 million loss. Your owner, Stan Kroenke. So 16th out of 28 heading into the 23 season when it came to valuation, and you were at $1 million loss under the ownership of the McGuires.
Yeah, I'm going to keep beating this drum.
Yeah.
The league screwed up by bringing Minnesota in when they did.
Well, Minnesota screwed up with their approach, thinking that they could be a USL team and on a USL budget and try to figure out their way in and be that way in year one.
100%. They completely misread the situation around them. They went into a war zone with a butter knife and acted like they were so shocked when nothing worked, right? Like, well, hey, what's going on? The league needs to contact the Wilfs. The Wilf family is the family that owns the Minnesota Vikings. Mm-hmm. And they need to say, guys, Ziggy, what do you think about buying the Minnesota United? Well, we already own Orlando City. No. We'll find an owner in Central Florida to take Orlando. They'll take Orlando. You take Minnesota. And you have that stadium, right? Which is great, awesome, good. Move them indoors.
Oh, move them to U.S. Bank?
Move them to U.S. Bank. Share the stadium with the Vikings. That will be far easier to convince players to come if they're playing indoors, out of the elements. You keep the stadium and use that for your facility, your training ground, whatever. I don't know. Find a use for it. Lease it to high school teams, whatever it is. But there's nothing about this ownership group that instills faith that they are going to have a remote clue about what's going on. Even if the Wilfs keep Minnesota's stadium operational and say, look, in the first part of the year, we're going to be at US Bank. When the weather gets better, we're moving outdoors, right? I think that would be great. I think that would be, it would show forward thinking on their part. But the Wilfs who are heavily invested in Minnesota, let them take that team, because this ownership group has the owner may have the name doctor, may have the title doctor, but he's coming across as more like Dr. Steve Brule instead of somebody who spent, decades in getting certificates piled up. It's mind-bending to me how clueless this team is.
All right. Let's see. We are at the top of the hour. And we got another couple of topics to get into. I know Atlanta United. I know that there are some of you that have been discussing approach for Atlanta United when it comes to getting players and fees and picking up players. And I know that there was some math in the midfield, and we'll probably get into that as well. A couple of other things I wanted to get into when it came to Major League Soccer and franchises. Nick, as another piece of business, when you announce a coach,
yes,
what when you're writing a press release and you've got a new coach announcement, how would you, in say the 280 character app, how would you announce that you have a new head coach?
I would have a very slick video, right? A very slick video, highlight, animated, the coach on the sideline, heavy cuts to the coach looking like $1 million wearing a custom made suit, and then I would have just it's from a text perspective. It would be all about the horizon and how this new manager might as well be, freaking George Patton. This guy is going to be Dwight Eisenhower, leading us to victory over the bad guys. It's that level. That's how you have to bring in a coach. That's
okay.
You gotta enthusiasm, baby.
Okay, so if you were a particular team and you were announcing, even as a headline on the 280 character app, wouldn't you also include the name of the coach?
I would absolutely. You have to. That should be a given, right? That's something that shouldn't even have to be said, right?
Okay. So the New England Revolution, the Revs 2.
Oh God.
Revs 2, MLS Next Pro. Here's how yesterday, this was their headline. News, in all caps. Revolution 2 announces updated coaching staff. Beat 2, 3, 4. That's all they did. Revs decided this year that their head coach for Revs 2 is Richie Williams.
Richie the Rat.
He was not announced in the headline as the new head coach for Revs 2.
Richie the Rat.
So the Revs are keeping Richie. We had wondered. That is not me, by the way.
That's not me. That's me. That is me.
Revs 2 announces updated coaching staff. And then you have to click on the article to see the coaching staff update. And I'm clicking on the article to see the coaching staff update.
Way to give away clicks, John.
New England Revolution 2 announced today several updates to the club's second-team coaching staff for the 2024 MLS Next Pro season. Following Clint P.A.'s move to the first team as an assistant coach, Richie Williams assumes the role of Revolution 2 head coach. You have to click on the article, and you get to line number 4 before you understand that Richie Williams is the new head coach of Revs 2 in 2024.
In the PR world, we call that burying somebody. Whenever you're trying to bury the bad news or the controversial news or the news that is going to not go over well, you bury it, right? So by posting on your social media, here's updated coaching, no name, no nothing. You're hiding, right? You're the object behind the 8 ball. You're hiding it. You're playing a shell game, right? Which under which shell is which is a little ball and whenever you have to click through to a site and then read down, you're just even more, because what you're going to have is they know when they are putting this social media strategy together, they're sitting in a room and the general manager or team leadership comes in and says, okay, comms, we're moving with Richie to be the manager for the Revs 2, and we know that this, because there's a lot of Bruce Arena supporters out there, this could be kind of problematic, but
and we still don't know what Bruce Arena did or did not
still
do.
don't.
And
no
he is
idea.
Still under suspension by Major League Soccer. And according to Tommy Scoops a couple weeks ago, it's anticipated that he will be reinstated at some point. But we still do not know what Bruce Arena did or didn't do.
Which means it's either the worst thing imaginable or it's so hilariously stupid that they're just trying to save face at this point. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
But then the manager goes, okay, all right, so you guys have that. We'll send all the information on Richie over for the releases, and comms run with it. That management gets up and walks out of the room. Comms is left there, and they say, okay, let's talk about this. All right. So we know this is going to go over like a flaming bag of dog crap left on the doormat. Yeah. So how do we do this? And anybody? Okay, I have an idea. What we're going to do is we're just going to say we've announced coaching changes, and if somebody wants to click through, they can click through. But let's just save the admin the headaches of having to fish through Richie the Rat postings for the rest of the friggin' month. We'll wait 48 hours. It'll blow over. It's going to become a non-story, and we move on with our thing. That's generally, by the way, how every corporate entity and every politician thinks when it comes to social media. We bury it. We weather the storm for 24 to 48 hours. Eventually, everyone moves on, and we could continue about our business, right? And there will always be a segment of the fan base and or the population who's just mad at the world.
Uh-huh.
And they're going to stay mad, and there's nothing we can do about it. And everyone else will just move on, and we could just keep doing our thing. That's what they're counting on you to do. Whenever you sign a player who has a ton of questionable activities in their past or things that people want to hide, whether you hire an executive who is known for turning both eyes, cellular devices, and everything else away from known levels of abuse, you're just going to get over it. You're just going to get over it. And this is the same thing. They hide it. That's it. That's all they do. Because they want meh. They want, oh, well. They want who cares. That right there, in their mind, gets solved by winning. Meh gets solved by winning. Blinding rage only gets softened a little bit by winning, because they can then have leverage against that argument. But he wins.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure, he's a horrible human being, but he wins.
Yeah.
Bob Knight choked out some kid, and then he threw a steel chair at somebody's head, but he wins.
Uh-huh. All true. So, paragraph 2 of the release, after they announced the entire
There's
staff.
more. Good Lord.
Well, just here's how the release was structured. You mentioned comm staff. I'm going to give the layout of the press release. So paragraph 1 announces all of the dudes for Revs 2. And obviously Richie Williams is bold-faced, as well as each name for each coach in each addition to Revs 2. They were bold-faced in paragraph 1.
Mm-hmm.
Paragraph 2, 3 sentences from Kurt Analfo of positivity and focusing on getting rid of the baloney. Then you get a paragraph about Richie Williams. You get a paragraph of 1, 2, 3, 4 other individuals who are named to the Revs 2 staff. And then you get the tag paragraph about camp opening up and getting ready for the season. And then they have a fun graphic laying out the Revolution 2 hierarchy. So those of you who are fans of Maslow, get your hierarchy squared away. So that's how New England decided to bury the lead and hire Richie Williams as the head coach of Revs 2.
It's going to play out like the ending of Goodfellas. It's gonna have Richie walking in, and instead of sitting on a witness stand and giving up all the mobsters, it's going to involve him just like walking slow motion into the Two's locker room with Gimme Shelter blasting in the background. Bruce Arena. It's going to cut to Bruce Arena sitting at home, throwing his coffee at the television. His significant other, Bruce, calm down. No, I've been ratted out. It was Richie all along. I'm telling you, man, it's happening.
Well, if you go into the comments under that announcement on the 280 character app,
give it to me.
There are hashtag Richie the Rat more than once.
Yeah.
And there are pictures of human bodies with rat heads as a part of pictures that have been photoshopped, and rats in general. So, and gifts, you're a rat, that kind of a thing. Literally the first half a dozen pieces of media, not to mention all of the displeasure that was announced when it came to the actual 280 character announcement. You did have Richie the Rat as a hashtag several times over.
I'm just telling you. Read the tea leaves, baby.
Mm-hmm. And news out of New England, they've re-signed DeJuan Jones to a 4-year contract extension through the 27th season. So that's what you're looking at there with the Revs. So that's your business 101 for the day, looking at Minnesota and New England. Like I said, Niko Moreno joining us in about 20 minutes. I know a lot of you have been talking about the outbound dudes on in the Twitch pitch this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been discussions about the front office and the approach. And it started with Emilio's discussion wanting to know how many matches Ibarra, Josechu, Sosa, and Lopez played to validate the total transfer fee. And then D. Graham did the math. You remember, guys, when you brought in players like an Ibarra and a Lopez, professionally, they'd only played a handful of matches. They were brought in because of the promise that was attached to their dossier. No, they did not have a lot of professional experience, so they were there to learn and were put into situations because of injuries and such, where they had to kind of have the on-the-job training. Unfortunately, Santi Sosa was not healthy a lot, and when he was healthy, you got to see the kind of individual that he was. And I know that we're going to disagree on Mateus Josechu. I know we are, because what I've always tried to explain for the midfield, the way that I've always broken it down was like this, Nick. Think of the midfield in this system almost like a 3-guard offense in basketball. You don't want your 3 guards all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You want a point guard, you want a shooting guard, and you want a defender.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so the way that I present this midfield is that Thiago Almada, he's your shooting guard. Your point guard is Mateus Josechu, and the third midfielder was going to be your defender. He was going to be the guy that you brought in for defensive purposes. You pound the floor with your hands, and that's the guy that's going to get you the defensive stop. So you're also having to deal with chemistry when it comes to things like that. So Josechu for me was more the point guard in that midfield. He was the guy that calmed things down, looked at the shot clock, made sure that pace was there. Everything's fine. Okay, where's my outlet? Okay, I'm going to pass to this guy. We'll see what happens on the offensive side of the ball. So that's how I viewed the midfield. And I know that a lot of folks, like I said, Emilio and folks were looking at numbers and matches and things like that and wondering about justification of fees to bring those folks in. So that was just point number 1 as we go down here and catch up on the Twitch pitch, Nick.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I may disagree a bit about. I think Almada is more of your orchestrator, in the point guard role.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents on it. However, but my thought is on this is that when you had we had Jeff Lorenowitz back there, right? Who was originally, I think, brought in to be just a depth piece. There to be a starter year 1, there to then rotate a depth piece, and then in year 2. And I think that whenever Lorenowitz ended up retiring, it put you in a position where you have to then, start figuring out the next steps, right? And you had talent that you were looking to move, right? Bring in, build, sell, bring in, build, sell.
Yeah.
And I believe that there were players that, if things had stayed the same, like Gabriel Heinze had not burned every bridge internally, and then I also had the media, go knives on him and everything else. I think that you're probably getting this conversation would probably be very different regarding Sosa.
Yeah.
Right. Probably very different regarding several players.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that you bring someone in the ideal world, they're a starter out the gate.
Yeah.
In the ideal world, they are starters out of the gate. It's not an ideal world. Players come in, they may look like they're starter material. They don't necessarily settle as well as you would hope. They don't play as well as you would hope, as consistently as you would hope.
Yeah.
And consistency, I think, is really the key here, right? Like in moments they were like, oh, wow, okay, cool. Heck yeah, man. And they just couldn't be consistent with it, you know? And over time you say, all right, well, we got this contract. We can't just dump the contract because we're in a cap league, right? So it's not like, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, anyone else who signs a player that's not working out, just throw them on the bench and then get rid of them, It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You have to get, when it becomes apparent that a player is not working out quite like you would hope, you try to find the best value possible for that player while you have control of their contract. And when that happens, you could just make the best of it. Like, look, we're going to change this player's role from starter to reserve, and hopefully they play their way into a starting role. When they come in, this allows them to sort of, change. Like when you change a batter's where they go in the batting order, it's, look, we're just going to try to change things around you, put some more protection around you, so that way you don't feel like you have the world on your shoulders. You could just go out there and play, or if you come in as a spot starter and now, wait, nope, we're moving you to the bullpen, we just try to change things up, and you go from being that sort of bellwether that we could put out there and just, have you carry us, to instead help us how you can. And if that still doesn't work, then you say, okay, look, it's time for a parting of the ways. But I think Rossetto was probably a better player than, and I'm happy to take slings and arrows, and you don't know what you're talking about, Nick, on this. I think Matheus Rossetto was a better player than people gave him credit for. I think, especially considering how the limitations of some of the players now with 2020 vision, we could see that he was probably carrying a bit more of that midfield than we gave him credit for. Yeah. And, I think we saw the limit of what he could do, and it's time. You've upgraded literally across the board in the midfield. You can say what you want about Ibarra. Ibarra's, the heart was there. Mm-hmm. Talent was there. Speed, pace, probably not. Kid worked his butt off. Admirable as hell. Mm-hmm. Tough as hell. Endeared himself to the fan base. You've upgraded that position. And it's a cold world, but you upgraded that position. So, the mentality with the org has changed now. It's just changed. Yeah. So the player profile is different.
Yeah. David thinks the big Garth Darren difference is how aggressive the build is. Darren and Carlos signed guys like Almada before they cleared a roster spot. Garth seems more focused on a longer-term plan. All the conversations we've had with Garth have been short-term pain, long-term gain. That's what it's always been with Garth. David continues. Clear a DP spot, create space and value, have depth, build more consistently. Thinking the extra gam that Atlanta United had early got those guys in full deal mode day one clearly was not sustainable.
When the mindset of you bring players up and you develop them and move them on, that, again, in a perfect world, is how clubs in Europe are, made sustainable. When you have catch lightning in a bottle, you win. When you don't, you move the players on, the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
I think that anybody who looks around MLS and says that Seattle has not figured out the best way to be a consistent winner within the cap constraints, if you said it, look, the Sounders just don't, whatever. Sounders aren't that great. I think you're at best confused, and I think at worst you're being disingenuous. That is the model of how to win in this league, right? And the model for Seattle winning in this league wouldn't necessarily be the model of how a team wins in another league, but it's how it happens here. And so to take one of the architects of that process and bring them in, I think it's an absolute win. And he's going to sit down with Carlos, and this has already happened, obviously.
Yeah.
And says, look, the kids from Argentina have been great. There's been some boom. There's been some bust. We need a little more quantifiable data on our future signings. We need players who have a little bit more game tape, played in different scenarios, different conditions, understand the kind of level of a team they're going to have around them. So you're not getting a kid from Buenos Aires who thinks he's walking into Real Madrid.
Yeah.
You need somebody who comes walking in and says, look, there's going to be salary constraints and we have to be successful. Who has this around the globe? Well, distressed assets.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom end of League One.
Yeah, and you're seeing Carlos and the staff going to those places on the planet that have distressed assets or financial need because of their situations.
Yes. And they're signing players. And Mayamba got in here, and out of the gate, you saw the change, right? You saw the defense was in a better position. The ability for, where attacks would stall, jump in the lines before, suddenly those lines were being connected again. It helps when you have players who can come in with a little bit more maturity and a little bit more of an understanding about what the situation of the team is, the situation of the league is. You're not going to shock any of these league bottom end League One guys and League Two guys with, hey, look, we kind of reached our spending limit. Oh, okay, cool. This is something they've heard many times. It's nothing new for them,
I mean, if you look at where you mentioned distressed assets and where Carlos and the staff are now looking, I mean, think about it. You have Tristan Muyumba, who comes from Guingamp. You've got Sabalob Janidze, who comes from Hatayspor. I think they were bottom of the table in the Turkish league. Then you have Jamal Chiade, who came from Le Havre. So once again, you're looking, and then once again, Gregerson, who comes in from Bordeaux, who's fighting for their lives in Ligue 2. So once again, you're trying to find those places where you've got those experienced dudes. Muyumba comes in at the age of 24. Lobjanidze comes in at the age of 27. Then Jamal Chiade comes in at the age of 28. So you're getting these guys who are in their mid to late 20s from these distressed locations to help out what you're trying to do philosophically. And so instead of following, everybody else is going, you're zigging while everybody else is zagging. You went back to Europe and found some finds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not every, you don't need to sign. If you could sign a kid out of Arsenal, great. If you could sign a kid out of Spurs, great. But you're going to pay a premium for that, So, Bobby Drinkwater is probably going to come with a 40 million, 50 million valuation.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to, you got to, again, the distressed assets, the team's like, oh my God, we're going to have to shut our doors if we can't get 8 million in here. Hey, Atlanta's on the phone. Ooh, mm-hmm. Who do they want?
Yeah.
Okay, great. But, what happens is Garth goes to the team and says, "Hey, Carlos and scouts, this is our new player profile that I think this is our strategy for winning. We target these kind of players, and we keep them around for a little longer. This is how we win now." And Carlos and team goes, "Cool," and they go and they execute.
Mm-hmm.
So where before Darren may have been like, "We're targeting South American talent, emerging talent, target them." Okay, and they went and did that. And so, but anytime you bring in an unknown, unquantifiable asset or with limited game tape and limited situations, the boom bust factor gets elevated. We see this every damn NFL draft. You have a quarterback from a blue blood. This kid's great. He's played in the Big Ten. He's played in all kinds of weather. It's no big deal. All right, great. But then you take a kid from Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
You may hit a pot of gold, or you may hit a pot of flaming poo. There's no telling, right? But you have to, not everyone is going to be a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen. You will have a lot of Cliff Kingsburys out there who are probably better coaches than they are quarterbacks. And
better coordinators than they are head coaches.
Correct. And so it's the same thing when you're talking about these players, really young players coming out of a situation, coming out of a mid-table team in Argentina may not translate as well as you think they will.
Yeah.
In MLS.
Yeah. D. Graham says the non-pro rel aspect takes the pressure off of those players too. The players know they're not going to be sold, meaning over here, if the team gets relegated. And then Tom Russo. And Tom, what about Josh Windass at Sheffield Wednesday? He's being looked at by MLS teams. Tom is surprised the league hasn't mined the lower tiers of the EFL, the Championship, League One, League Two, for solid players looking to make a better wage, maybe get a little more notice for a bigger move later. Absolutely. And David, with the true philosophical question for you, Nick, who puts flaming poo in a pot?
Scoundrels.
And then they
scoundrels and proprietors of the shenanigan activity.
Proprietors of the shenanigans, and they try to sit there and it's like the Anthony Bourdain segment in The Big Short. Where,
you have 3-day-old fish. You make a seafood soup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the morally ambiguous chef that I am.
Yeah. You said like you know exactly what Bourdain is doing there.
Yes, exactly.
It's like this fish didn't sell. They put it in the pot. Hey, it's fish stew.
That's right. So it's the key thing here is, oh my God, Hutcho. Oh, you are a master of chaos, microwaving the fish.
Oh man.
Oh, madman.
See, this is what happens when you start talking about food with Nick, and how to cook it. The microwave is not going to be a part of this discussion.
No, my God, no. There's not a microwave in my house. I'm just letting you know.
There's not.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right.
Changes the texture, changes the flavor. No.
Okay.
Not a good trade-off there.
No. Franco Panizzo, like I said, Niko Moreno joining us around the corner. Franco Panizzo mentioned that there is one particular individual who is under contract with Messi and Friends. And he is a part of the old regime, shall we say.
God.
The problem that is occurring for one particular individual at the beginning of training camp for Messi and Friends. Here's how it was phrased by Franco. One Inter Miami player who was absent from training was Harvey Neville. Sources tell me Neville did not take part in any of the optional practice sessions that the team held earlier in the week either.
No.
So yesterday, following up on that, he wanted to find out more about Harvey Neville and Messi and Friends. Messi and Friends officially issued a no comment regarding the status of the absent English defender. I'm thinking maybe they're trying to find a way to see if they can get some kind of AM or assets and send him to Portland so he can be with his father again.
Look, I mean, we'll send you $10 in TAM.
Yeah, basically.
That's it. You're getting $10 in TAM.
Mm-hmm.
You get the deal done. You just get the deal done. That's it. That's all you do. Just get the deal done. Get the kid out of there.
Mm-hmm.
If the kid wants to, here's the thing, the kid may not want to.
And that's the key.
Kid may want to, I'm going to do it on my own steam.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, we've experienced that here in Atlanta with with players that have a game that only a parent could love.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Going back over your cooking, sir. Tom says that's why the special at a restaurant may not always be the best option. Usually it's because they have to get rid of proteins that haven't sold. Indeed. Not always, though. Sometimes they get a good deal on something they don't usually get, so it can be a crapshoot. But
that's right.
I'm kind of leaning toward comment and sentences numbers 1 and 2 myself.
Well, it depends. I mean, like you have. So if you. There's a lot that goes into this, right? So it depends on where you are. And, so if you're in Colorado and you have ocean fish, like ocean-based fish on your menu, it's frozen and it's being shipped to you, right? There may be like 1 or 2 ultra high-end restaurants that are like flying in unfrozen fish, but you end up over time stockpiling this. You have a meat and potatoes crowd that, they start going on a run of like, redfish or whatever. And that's great, but there's going to be a period where that, waxes and wanes. And during the lean times, that fish, you're used to bringing it in. So you're still getting that certain supply, and you're like, well, crap, we've got a ton of redfish here we got to get rid of. Even if it's frozen, it still has a life where it's not going to really be good past date X.
Right.
So what do we do? Well, okay, we make a seafood soup, or we make make it this and make it that, whatever. You find a way to get that protein out of there while making up as much money as humanly possible. So you want to make a dish that is very cheap to make. Soups are traditionally very cheap to make. And you can just hack it up, chop it up. You don't have to present it in a pretty way. It doesn't take a ton of time. Hack in the soup it goes. You cook it with some very fragrant, herbs, and you cook it with all the tasty stuff surrounding it that kind of masked the fact that it was frozen seafood, and then out the door it goes. That's why when people say, in Italy, you don't put cheese on seafood, right? Think of like how big Italy is, right? It's a very narrow country.
Yeah.
So even if you are in Milan, you're not terribly far from the sea.
Yes.
You could still get fresh seafood. You want fresh seafood to really be like, it should have, the smell and the taste of like ocean air. It should not be pungent. It shouldn't be, anything that kind of makes you go, oh, okay, all right, that's fishy. That's a no-no. But if you have fish that has been frozen or has been locked away in some grocer's freezer for God knows how long, you're going to have restaurants that try to cover that up. Yeah. Like we're going to make a very rich tomato sauce to cover this this very old frozen shrimp up. Or we're going to make a tomato-based soup, with a metric ton of lemon in it, to get it to kind of cover up that flavoring. And you also get some chefs who just don't know how to prepare. Like you get like sail cat, for example. If you don't cut the bloodline out of sail cat, it really, really messes with the flavor. You got to cut the bloodline out in order to get that nice, clean fish taste to it. Mm-hmm. But you have some chefs who don't know that or do it. So that's why sail cat ends up getting such a bad reputation. Or I don't like eating shrimp because I don't like the dirt grains inside. Well, that's a lazy chef who doesn't want to devein the shrimp, because they're dealing with frozen typically. They don't want to deal with that. If you're cutting fresh shrimp, it's easy to take the head off, devein them, and take it from there. Smart chefs will do the shrimp with the heads on anyway, because then you can make your shrimp stock, your seafood stock out of that.
Yeah.
What do you mean yuck?
Just, you not wanting to devein and things. It's just like,
I mean, look, you're in a kitchen in the rush. If you're in a kitchen and you're in the rush and you're doing food prep, the idea of peeling and deveining a ton of shrimp in the middle of an evening rush that's like Dante's like third circle, like third ring of hell. So, but you need to do it. It's one of those things that sucks, but you need to do it. But a lot of chefs don't do it. They're undermanned, they're understaffed. And, I think undercrewed is probably the appropriate response.
Yes.
Undercrewed, and they need to, it's like, all right, well, look, just put it in there and send it out. All right. Okay, great.
Exactly. All right. So it's that time. It's last half hour Thursday, which means we go out west. We find out which numbered cup of coffee is in the rave green mug. We will answer. We will get this answer. And Nick, the conversation that we were having about Garth Lagerwey, let's carry it over and welcome in Niko Moreno. Niko, it is Nick, it is John, and it is you. Welcome, sir, for your Thursday.
Hey, what's going on? SDH family, happy to be here. We are on cup number 2 of coffee. It's been a good week, busy week. Finally got back to Starfire, which was surprising because we thought we were going to be in Long Acres, the Sounders' new facility, but we either way got to finally see the first couple of glimpses of what the Sounders might look like in 2024. So just excited to be back. Lots to talk about. So let's do it. You guys were talking Garth Lagerwey, huh?
Yeah, we were. Nick, go ahead and present your argument that you had in the last half hour about Garth and the approach in Seattle and their way of doing things. Let's see what Niko says.
Well, Niko, my thought was this, is that Atlanta for a long time had we find emerging South American talent, we bring them up, we develop, we sell, right? That's just, the idea was that you catch lightning in a bottle with this young crew, you win as many trophies as you can, they're gone in a 2 to 3 year period, you bank the cash, you reinvest that, everyone wins. Obviously, we saw that the idea of catching lightning in a bottle, probably not as regular as people would like. But if you look to the Pacific Northwest and you see a team like Seattle, where it's, we're not bringing in, a bunch of 18 and, 19, 20-year-olds from Argentina. We're going to find maybe like a, 25, 26-year-old Chilean and bring them in. They're going to be here for a little while. They can bring, there can be team chemistry. There can be, an opportunity for these players to stick around for a bit and really buy into team identity. People who say that, Seattle, okay, whatever. If they say anything outside of Seattle is the model of how to run a club long-term in a cap league, they are either being ignorant of the situation or they're being disingenuous. And Seattle's method may not work in like the Eredivisie or the Prem or La Liga, but it works like a charm here in MLS. And I think that's why you had Atlanta come in and snag Garth Lagerwey, because you need one of the key architects of that to come in and assign those player profiles for the scouting department to go get. And I think that's what you've been seeing in the signings that Atlanta has been getting as of late, 25, 26, 27-year-olds who come in here from distressed assets, distressed places that need that money. This is, look at what Seattle's been doing. Look how they've been winning, right? Mix of domestic talent, international talent does not necessarily boom bust quite like what we were doing here in Atlanta for so long.
Yeah, I mean that's a convoluted conversation and question, and there's 1,000 ways I can go for it, and I will spend some time on it if you allow me to, because it is a great theme. It's something that I love to talk about. Uh, Garth Lagerwey, Sounders. I mean, there's a lot of touch. So, and all subjects that I love talking about. So let's start with the Sounders philosophy, and it's not just, it doesn't just work in MLS. I mean, uh, I know I get the side eye when I say this, but it's not just Barcelona, but in Colombia Nacional and other teams around the world, they do things based on a attempt and a effort to have their own academy or under teams bring up talent, right? And that's something that Seattle has done and done even better since the time Garth Lagerwey stepped into the organization. There was a huge amount of money put into the academy. There was a huge emphasis of resources put into trying to develop kids, and you've seen the results of that, at least on how many kids you've been able to use when needed and how good they've been when they were needed. Obed Vargas, Josh Atencio, Danny Leyva. I mean, all of these guys that have come up and you've been able to use when necessary are part of that development. And that does help with the sprinkles of course, having guys that are proven and that you're not going to have to maybe wait to adapt to the league as quickly, and that you're not calling them a prospect, right? Because Nicolas Odero, Raul Ruidiaz, those were the guys that you were going to build your team around. They were both proven players. They were both commodities. They had the intangibles on and off the field, both great at what they did. Raul was a killer in front of goal. He was an assassin, that goal scorer that was going to give you a different edge up top. And then you had Niko that was going to be your creative player. He was going to be your go-to guy. As a matter of fact, when he comes in and gets the newcomer of the year, he also had the goals on him because he took the league by storm. So those are the types of things in the philosophy that Seattle has here. We're going to build within. We're going to have our own talent. We're going to develop our own players that are going to be sustainable. And we're going to add these really good, proven players. You've heard me say this before. I know many people have said it now because they've talked to Garth Lagerwey 1,000 times. But he had a range of age between 24 to 29 years old. You know, he wants to make sure maybe even 25, 26. He'd rather to go that route rather than the young South American or the young European players, because those guys have been there, done that. They've been through it all, experience of life, experience on the field. They've had good seasons, bad seasons. There's a longer way to, there's more data involved for how much injuries have they gone through their career. Are they injury prone? Are they not? So those are all things that I believe that Garth Lagerwey and the Seattle Sounders made as their requirements to build their roster. So, and it happens everywhere. Again, like I said, I think that the philosophy there is we're going to grow our own talent and we're going to put it on the field and we're going to allow them to get better. And it's been really good for Seattle. It's worked in many ways. When it comes to the whole selling aspect, that's where things get interesting, because you kind of mentioned it across this whole conversation. And I've had this conversation with Garth. I've had it with Craig Weibel just recently, who's now the leading man here in Seattle. And he says, look, man, I don't give a bleep if I buy a player and I don't sell him. My job is not to sell players. My job is to get wins. I'm trying to get this team somewhere. So if along the way, I get a guy that I bring in and he's 22, 23, and he happens to just break out and I can sell them, then that's a win. Or if one of our talented players, like Reed Baker Whiting, like all of these new players that are coming in, Josh Atencio is a perfect example. If some of those guys break out, Cody Baker is another good one. So if any of those guys kind of breaks through, then that's a win. But I'm not trying every single day I go and buy the lottery ticket I'm going to waste my entire paycheck on hoping that I get it. That's not what I think we should do. And I agree with it. I had in this conversation, I shared experience. I had a conversation with Fernando Clavijo, rest in peace. He was one of the most brilliant minds in MLS at the time, and one of the guys that I believe have to be up there in terms of helping soccer in general in the U.S. And he used to tell me, and I'll try to make it as concise as I can, Niko, if I have a farm and the farmer is giving me coffee and bananas, I'm going to do coffee and bananas. And I'm not going to try to get gold because everybody else is on a gold rush, right? I'm going to work the field, I'm going to work the dirt, and I'm going to sustainably get money from what I have in my farm. And if maybe I'm breaking the ground and I find a piece of gold, then fantastic. But if I have a farm that has these specifically resources, and then I spend a whole bunch of money trying to do a gold rush around it, and I ruin the dirt, and I'm putting all these resources on it, even if I find a bunch of gold, I'm already down on what I spent, on what I invested in. Maybe the gold's not even worth as much. And that goes into this whole thing about, if I'm trying to get that big next explosive player, I'm going to be in some problems. And that's why you get the Ezequiel Barcos. That's why you get the Marcelino Moreno that didn't quite work out. That's all those things that happen is because you're trying too hard to find the next best thing, and you put yourself in a bad situation. Sosa was another guy that we thought he was going to be this amazing guy. Didn't quite break through, didn't quite get the help or develop the way you wanted. So that's the difference of what you might get now with Garlagorway, where you get the Giacomakis, you get the new signings this year, you get Saba. All those are all the players that you're going to be able to get when you have a guy like Garlagorway, that perhaps either way, he might find you a little bit of this new diamond in the rough, and maybe you're able to sell him. But his job is to get Atlanta to win a title. And once again, be part of the elite when it comes to trophies, not to be an exciting team that you want to watch, a team that wins.
And do that from the business side of things, and have Carlos Bocanegra and the player acquisition side do their thing. And Garth is doing this for the first time on the business side as the COO of this operation, and saying, okay, all right, it's short term. What we've always heard in the interviews early on that we had with him as well. Short term.
Yeah, and Garth, that's a great point. Garth wants to help Bocanegra. He doesn't want to overshadow him. He wants to give him a lot of that knowledge and not remove him from his position, allow him to do his thing, but under having that guy, that voice over the top. And I'm hearing that you guys are also looking for a player development position in that managerial side of things. So that's another good thing, right? It's Garth Lagerwey saying, okay, maybe Carlos need a little bit of help on the development of player side, plus me up top, and I'm doing my thing. So that's all. The infrastructure is just going to get better with Garth Lagerwey. The guy's brilliant. The guy knows what he's doing. And if I had a team in MLS and I won the lottery and said, Niko, here you go. Here's $300 million. The first call I would make is Garth Lagerwey.
And well, you've got the academy with Atlanta United, with all the academy aspects, with the players at the back, Noah Cobb, Efren Morales, Aiden Torres, that's a part of the discussion. The ones that have been working their way through. Caleb Wiley has come through the academy. So all of that work at the back for the players is there, with the growth from underneath with the academy, plus the acquisitions on the outside, getting it into that mid-20s range. And to your point, let's look at some of the ages of some of the guys here that have been brought in. Derek Williams, 31, center back, got him in the re-entry draft. You've got Gigi, who's 29, Lobjanidze, 29, Muyumba is 26, and then you've got Cohen in net, and then you also have Bartosz Slisz, who is coming from Legia Warsaw, and I think he's 26. So it's in that Lagerwey range, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah,
and those are the guys that you are gonna. And this is something that I mentioned when last year there were talks about the Silva coming in, and it's like, oh, you know, it doesn't have that Atlanta feel. Like you're right, it doesn't have that Atlanta feel, and that's a good thing. You're not getting a guy that you're going to be excited all through the time before he gets here, and you're disappointed, baby. I mean, that is what you're hearing right now. You got guys with different profiles, guys that are experienced from different leagues. That has Garth written all over it. Like I'm not saying if the Bocanegra, of course, has not been involved. He has to have been involved, and they're scouting, and there's a whole bunch of things that goes into it. But these are the guys; those are the acquisitions that, for me, have that Garth Lagerwey stamp that's so important.
Halftime with Niko Moreno, Thursdays with Niko at El Rolo in W, at Sports Pulso, at the Soccer Bar. Nick, what else is on your mind with Niko this morning?
Well, here's the question that I would have for you: is somebody who is a connoisseur of the South American leagues. You know, we've tapped into Argentina, right, as a league. Right, we seem to enjoy really getting players out of Argentina. Why are we not pulling players, more players, Colombian players, more Peruvian players, Ecuadorian players? Why? To me, it's like these are untapped areas. As much as we're going to, as Atlanta seems to be going toward Ligue 2, and that's great. I think it's amazing. You're getting great value there. But it just seems to me that we are not getting enough of these other players, Chilean players, like Chilean, Peruvian, Ecuadorian. I just need to know who's going to be the first outside in Asia. Yes. Now, fantastic option as well. Japanese players, Korean players. Who's going to be the first to really dive into these markets and just say, you can have Argentina. It's all you. This is us. And this is where we're going to be. Who do you think? Because I know you guys have had some success there. Is that something that you think you guys become more hyper-focused on that? Do you think you guys start looking overseas at Asia? Who else is going to be mining that talent?
Yeah, I mean, something that Chris Henderson used to tell me is that there are trends in scouting just like there are in stocks or in anything else, right? There's trends. And you saw a point where it was all Peruvian, right? Into the leagues. All these Peruvian guys coming in, and that's kind of where the trend of the market was going, because scouting on one side and not the other. Right now, Argentina, you're right. Maybe there should be more because as far as I've been able to find out in many conversations with journalists, coaches, and players in Argentina, economically, the league is suffering, and therefore there's a big demand to move players on so clubs can get money, and at the same time they become very economical. The reason why maybe you're not hearing it so much from Colombia and Ecuador and all of these things, just because the trend right now, it's there in Argentina, and you're trying to get these players that were either in the bubble of like the pre-Olympic Argentinian team, or they were in the Olympico Comebol or whatever it is, but the scouting is there. Maybe it hasn't come into fruition and nobody's pulled the trigger, but there's absolutely teams looking in all those leagues, because in South America, like you mentioned, you get the talent and you get the great price for it, right? Now, of course, you want to exploit other areas, and I can tell you that Seattle has looked at Asia. Seattle has been in Asia just recently, and the last season. I know that Portland had been looking at so as well on that and that end of the world. So the scouting gets done there, but because of the potential and how well developed 18, 19, 20-year-old South American player ends up being, he's already played semi-professionally or professionally at some point. A lot of times they have the pressure of the fans, they have the pressure of the league. Then you do kind of want to go that route, but I feel like it's already been exploded. It's not a gold rush, that an area that's not being scouted or has never been scouted. I think that there's a lot of teams that are there. It's just that perhaps it hasn't come to fruition necessarily. And at the same time, there are the big boy teams in Argentina that can say, you know what, this is my price for this player. And MLS teams have to understand, hey, you know what, that's not what I'm willing to pay, because just like that there's demand of players there, they know that MLS teams need those talents, and they can tax MLS teams, right? Maybe if it's a Mexican team coming in asking for a player, or maybe even a European team that's coming to go get a player, maybe that price is not as high. But when you hear MLS and you know how much they've been trying to get new players, then you tax them on it. And that's where maybe things don't go through, just like the whole Miguel Borja to Austin FC, where they declined the first offer and nothing has been said after that, is exactly that. They're trying to tax Austin on a player, and Austin said, that's all I'm willing to give.
All right, so let's take a tour around Major League Soccer here for the final 10 minutes of your segment here, hanging out with Thursdays with Niko. And the first hour of the show this morning, Nick took us to business school, and we did MLS Soccer Business 101, and we were beating the britches off of Minnesota United because of everything that is not going on at Minnesota United, including bringing back a nickname for the second year in a row for Emmanuel Reynoso. They are 38 days away from their first game. They're on their second substitute teacher. Their chief soccer officer is in England still, awaiting a visa, and they thought it was going to be this week, but apparently it's going to be next week. He hasn't met with the players and wants to meet with them face-to-face for their first interactions instead of doing it virtually. What in the blue thunder, who is going on in Minnesota?
I don't think anyone knows. And as always, there is this underlying narrative of, I don't even know what's going to happen with the players that were important for the squad last season, right? Because we're already hearing things about Reynoso, like you mentioned. We already don't know where this team is going in terms of leadership, that coach. I know that the season's still long days away, but if you're going to get a team prepared, you got to start that ideology today, if not last week, right? I mean, it is as simple as you got to get your module ready. You got to get the guys on board. You got to figure out, you got to come in and say, okay, I've been hearing a lot about Minnesota, and I know that what I'm getting out of each player, or maybe I've seen it from one aspect, but not as a head coach. And now I got to figure out where everybody's going. I got to have that sit down with everyone and understand, hey, do you want to be here? Fragapane, sir, you were put in the fridge last year. Do you want to be here? Are you willing to play? Is that what you want to do, right? Are you going to talk to Arriaga and say, hey, you played several positions last year. Where are you going to be more valuable to this team? So all of those things, right? John was a good player that you brought in. How are you going to be able to develop him into an even better player? All of those questions need to be asked, and you need to be able to look at this roster and figure it out, and you haven't done it. Mm-hmm. Now, the good thing for Minnesota is that what I've been saying as of last year, and I'll hold that today, the West is a little bit shaky.
Yeah.
The best teams are in the East. So even Seattle has some question marks, and we'll talk about Seattle here in a second. I'll give you that deep look at Seattle. But when you look at Austin, they're a mess. You look at San Jose, there's a lot of question marks there. You look at Portland, I have zero faith in Neville. You have all of these teams that were and have always been big, and now you're kind of thinking maybe I have a chance, right? So Minnesota at least has that going for themselves. Even LAFC right now, I feel like I don't know where they're going, right? And they had some struggles last year. So with all that said, I think, yes, Minnesota is setting themselves up for failure, but maybe the fact that the West is not as strong still gives them a chance to, just like last season, barely be in the conversation for playoffs.
Nick, hit it.
Well, no, I think that it's interesting to see how the league has, again, that pendulum effect. There was a time when the West was running things, and then, now to see that pendulum shift to the East, and how that's going to, what's going to end up leading to it swinging right back out to the West. It's just interesting. I love this crazy ass league for this very reason. Nowhere else are you, in my opinion, are you getting this level of buffoonery week in and week out, where one team who has no business being competitive suddenly is hyper competitive, right? I think Defensa y Justicia down in Argentina might be one of the examples I have of where we've seen anything like that, right? But it's the rise and the falls of the teams in this league. It's so much damn fun. It really is so much fun. And I know I come across as a Major League Soccer homer by saying this, but it's where the hell else are you getting this level of excitement globally? South America, you'll get it. Yeah, you'll get some of this, sure. But year in and year out, this league, it just keeps you locked in and entertained.
It's anybody's game, right? And I think that the level of parity is something that MLS has above any other league, really. Because even in South America, if I go from Colombia to Argentina to Chile to Uruguay, there's like 3 to 4 teams that every year they're going to win it for sure. You could bet whatever you want, and one of those 4 teams, they're going to win it, or they're going to be right there. And every other team is just fighting for mid-table positions or not get relegated. I mean, that's literally it, right? That's where the fun is trying to figure out who's going to come in, who's going to come out. Yeah. But at the end of the day, who's going to win it. Let's not talk about La Liga. Let's definitely not talk about the Bundesliga when it comes to who's going to win it. I mean, you already know it, right? So that's the thing about Major League Soccer, when you have a team like St. Louis come in and just take the best in the Western Conference, and then on the other side, you get teams like New York City on the East that you thought they were going to do great. They have this great group behind it, and they're a big dud. So those are the things that I believe make MLS so interesting and so much fun.
All right, so hit me with Seattle. What's going on?
All right, so we're back at Starfire. Like I said, interesting. It sounds like the team will be using the new facilities, but not till after they come back from Spain, Marbella, Spain. Yes, they are going to Marbella, Spain.
Are you going?
February. Huh?
Are you going?
No, absolutely not. I have traded in that trip to go to Colombia. I'll be going to Colombia in February myself, so I won't be able to be in Spain because I had planned a family getaway for 2.5 weeks in Colombia. So yeah, I don't get to go to Spain, but I do get to visit beautiful Cartagena with the family. So I won't be there, but the team is going from the 26th to the 10th. So that's interesting. They did that last year. Obviously, no Club World Cup this year, but they like the atmosphere. They like the competition over there. They have a lot of connections that I think could give them the possibility of some interesting preseason games. Plus, I like the fact that you do something different every year away from Arizona or just here in Renton or Tequila, whatever you do it. That's exactly what I think gives players a different atmosphere, right? But let's go ahead and get to the players, right? It was nice to see that the atmosphere of the players, the camaraderie be there. It seemed like the feel was good. The vibe of the team was good. And that's something that I was very interested in and curious about because of, some of the problems that were last season. No Nicolas Odero, now with Orlando City, all of these things, right? You were hoping that was there. And it was. A lot of the experienced players were there. Some were not, and we'll get to that in a second. But it was good to see Joe Pablo. Looks fantastic. Looks at not just from a leadership role, but just looks so good on the ball. Always seems to stay strong in the offseason. Love to see Albert Rusnak there. Now he's the it guy. He's going to be your creative player. He seems like he's really getting into the shape of things with this new group. And I do believe that it's a new group for him because it's different to be the guy with Niko there and you being the guy without Niko there. Right now, your responsibilities grow. Your necessity to be a bigger voice on that field grows. And I think he did it well within the 2 games that I've seen it. A lot of young players that are interesting. Raul Rodriguez was brought up from Tacoma Defiance to the first team, was signed by the Sounders. He was interesting. I mean, I wouldn't call him young, I guess, because he's 24, but he was brought up from Tacoma Defiance. But he looked really good, explosive, good on the ball, nifty, beating guys off the dribble. So that was good to see. see. Cody Baker was another player that was impressive, another young player that was really impressive in the two games and two training sessions that we got to see. Raul Ruiz, right? That was the guy that you were hoping to take a look at. He looks very involved. He looks serious, intense, almost like he did when he first came on from Morelia. That intensity, that laser focus on everything. Plus, before he was doing a little bit of laughing and playing, and that's always important for a guy like Raul. In terms of the roster, though, I'm still a little bit skeptical. There are only two real strikers within the team, and it's Jordan and Raul. There's nothing else for this team. So whether Rodriguez, Braulio could be there and be the guy for you, maybe, but there's really nothing else there. And that, to me, is concerning. Even if you're going to go with one striker and you're trying to make that decision between Raul and Jordan Morris, I just don't feel like that's the strategy that you should go with, because it goes back to the playoffs last season and the struggles that you had by having Raul as your bench and having Jordan as the 9 and Leo on the left. So I think that there needs to be a strong look at either bringing another player or how you're going to be able to maximize what you have there. Freddie Montero is still in negotiations with the team, but he's more of an experienced guy. I want him here. I think he's an asset. Is he the guy that you want as your next option at striker every game? Probably not, but he's definitely a guy that you want on your bench, right? Because regardless of his age, I thought he produced when he was called upon last year. He's a locker room guy. He's a creative player. He still has a gifted foot. So I would like to see Freddie back, but I also would like to see someone else be brought into this team. Question marks here. Jackson Reagan either re-aggravated a knee or had a new knee injury. Brian Smetzer talked about the timeline. He wasn't sure whether he suffered that injury with the U.S. national team camp, or is that something that just he had a step back on from the injury he suffered against LAFC last year. That's tough. You still got Yeimar, who was not with the team and will not be with the team till maybe he might be the team in Spain. I'll tell you that right now. Brian Smetzer mentioned that he might be back. I don't foresee it. I think Yeimar is going to have to meet the team in Spain because he's trying to get his green card, which it helps the team, of course, right? He's going through the process of the green card, but Colombian Embassy, man, it's slow and it's loaded. And I don't see him getting his visa into maybe another week. He still has to go back to Argentina to meet with his family. So I don't think he's going to meet the team till the team gets to Spain. We got a first look at Nathan, who came from Earthquakes. I like what I saw. Poised player, good passer, but he's a little bit on the narrower frame side. And at center back, I don't really like the narrower frame. I feel like he needs a little bit of some Nesquik or something to just build up those muscles and really get bigger. But we'll see how he plays out. He's an interesting guy. Bell from San Luis has a chip on his shoulder, man. He said, I feel like I got the door closed on me by San Luis. I got a chip on my shoulder. I want to prove that I belong in this league. Like that mentality. He's going to be, I think, more of a left back option here with Nuhu on that side. So maybe he'll rotate. Maybe he'll play a little bit of center back. But in the practices, he was at left back. So that's kind of what you get right now. Pedro Del Vega, he will be here. It's not about if, it's when. Probably everybody's favorite quote by Brian Smetzer this week was, he'll be here. So he will be here. Hopefully everything gets situated, and maybe whether it's before Marbella or at Marbella, but Pedro de la Vega will be there. So there you go. That's kind of a little bit of insight of what we saw this week for the Sounders. I will say, though, that my expectations not incredibly high right off the bat. I'll be honest with you. I think that there's going to be some issues starting off. I don't expect Pedro de la Vega, who, he has some injuries and still a young player, to come in and have that Nicolas Odero effect. I really don't. So how long does it take him to really adapt to this new squad, what he's going to provide? Brian seems to be very sure of that core group that played last year to come in and be better this season just because you have a healthy Christian Roldan now, and that's a big part. You got Jordan now fully on that 9 position. So we'll see how that works out, but I'm keeping my expectations right here. I'm not there yet. I would be very careful with my expectations on the Seattle Sounders team.
All right, so that's the early rounds on Seattle. We still got plenty to talk about around the league. What's going on with you these days with Pulso Sports and Soccer Bar, and let everybody know where they can catch up with you.
All right, well, Pulso Sports is still going on. You can go find all of these interviews that I just mentioned. Talk to Nathan in Spanish, in English. Was able to talk to John Bell, Brian Smetzer, of course, Christian Roldan. We're planning a little bit of another, and one of my favorite things to do, as always, is a little roundtable as a preview of what's going to happen in Marbella for this team. So check that out. Soccer Bar has been on a standstill right now. I don't know if you know, but here in the Pacific Northwest, there's been some heavy storms. So our producer has had some issues with power outages and a whole bunch of things. So we put it on ice until hopefully next Monday. And ice is kind of ironic because that's what we have here in the Northwest right now. So we're hoping to get through that, and then we'll be back at Soccer Bar hopefully next Monday.
Take care of your 3 P's: your pets, your pipes, and your people. That is what you got to do this time.
Like that.
With what's going on up there in the Pacific Northwest. Inquiring minds want to know. So when you go to Cartagena, are you going to be doing Thursdays with Niko from there? Are you going to be live from Colombia on Thursdays to hang out with us, or are you actually going to take time and completely unplug?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. I think that I could persuade my wife into maybe me stepping away for 30 minutes at least once or 2 times out of those 2.5 weeks. Yeah, I would like to do so, just to say we did a remote thing from Cartagena. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I know, because we got to chase after the steps of Jack Colton and Romancing the Stone. We've got to finish up with Cartagena. That's going to be, if we can pull that off with the internet speeds, that would be fantastic. My friend, it's always great to catch up with you on Thursdays. Thanks for hanging out with me and Nick, and we will catch up with you next week.
Thank you, John. My man over there in the corner, too. Take it easy.
Yeah, man.
All right. So that's Niko, and it's great to catch up with Niko. Nick, before we go, since the 4th official has held up the sign, and he has said that we are doing added minutes. We're definitely doing that. So let's go through gossip, rumor, and innuendo, and what to watch before we get out of here. And what to watch, you've got AFCON going on. Noon, it is Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Egypt and Ghana is at 3. Being in Espanol. You can catch that on Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Helps out us at the network, helps out Fanatis. And if you are a true sicko of the game like we are, you get to get things like all the BNs, Liga 1 Max, you get the Brasileiro, you get CDO for the fans, Teise, Gold TV, all that stuff at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Speaking of Gold TV, they've got the Portuguese Premier at 3:45, and they've also got the Serie Rio de la Plata, 3:45, 6, and 8:15. Atletico Tucumán's playing at 6, Vasco da Gama, and San Lorenzo at 8:15. On the plus, Copa del Rey, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid. Maybe do a little advanced scouting on Simeone and see if he wears a color other than black. And the answer to that would be no. 3:20. Golasso Network has Asian Cup, Palestine and the UAE at 12:30. Paramount Plus has India and Uzbekistan wrapping up. Palestine UAE is also on Paramount Plus at 12:30. And the Italian Supercoppa with Napoli and Fiorentina is at 2 o'clock.
Interesting.
Very, very busy day on the stuff. So gossip, rumor, and innuendo before we go. Jordan Henderson has given up the money to go to Ajax. He has surrendered funds to make it easier for Ajax to pick him up. And it also appears that Steven Gerrard has been handed a new deal at Al Ettifaq despite not winning a game since October. So good work if you can.
Hey, good for them, I guess. Look, I'm more interested in the Jordan Henderson thing because it's going to be very interesting. They had a lot of older players who took the money and ran, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
now they're all regretting the decision, apparently.
It seems that a lot of them are regretting that decision. You have a player like Mo Adams, who is playing over there and seemingly loving it. The good for him. If that's the case and he's living his life, that's marvelous. I wish him nothing but the best. But for some of these players who still had time and ability, who elected to jump at the cash, I think a lot of them are going to figure out very quickly that with money comes control.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn about this very quickly in the film industry, that the more money someone gives you, the more control they're going to have over your product.
Correct.
And you sometimes need to make that choice between freedom and a very fat bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would caution anyone before they sign any kind of big deal where it's like, oh man, all my financial problems are solved. The minute that enters your head, you need to hit the brakes. Read the fine print.
Who controls the asset? That is the question.
Yes. And what is your day-to-day life going to be like? Not just for you, but for the people around you.
Breaking news that we kind of talked about like a week and a half ago. It's now officially official, Nick. You remember, we've been talking about the purple team this morning and their owners. We've been talking about that stadium that's down there that's been named after the travel entity. They got the new name on the stadium. It is now officially Inter & Co. Stadium. 10 years with the digital banking entity. So Inter & Co. Stadium is now going to be the home of the purple team in Middle Florida.
Oh, my God. Oh. Observational comedy. It's just observational. It occurs naturally out in the wilderness. It just grows like a wildflower. Yeah. Like a bird in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It's so stupid.
So Inter & Co. will host Inter & Co. hosting Messi and friends when they travel to Central Florida to take on the purple team.
Oh, my God.
10-year deal till 2033. I don't think they get there because we're talking about a digital banking entity. But Inter & Co. Stadium in Central Florida. It's officially official. So we got that going for us, which is nice. Oh, my God. Atletico Madrid and Barca among 6 clubs interested in Calvin Phillips. Future set to be decided next week from the Telegraph. Newcastle scouring Europe for midfield replacements. Entirely dependent on if convincing Manchester City to lower their demands, because Newcastle, remember, they're dealing with FFP now for the next 2 years, and they're already 70% there.
Yep.
Magpies sent their head of scouting to watch Atalanta midfielder Ederson in a 5-0 win against Frosinone, but the Italian club have no interest in selling a 24-year-old Brazilian in January. That's from our friends Tutto Mercato.
Who are they going to buy?
That's what I'm saying.
The only thing can they afford the plane ticket?
Doubtful at this point. And Spurs have not given up hope of signing Conor Gallagher for the tune of 45 to I think it's 45 to 50 million from Chelsea. Chelsea are willing to let Armando Broja leave on a permanent if a suitable offer is received. West Ham, Fulham, and Wolves are among those interested. Chelsea's going to ask for 50 million for Broja, who scored 2 goals in 17 appearances this year. Portugal striker Gonzalo Ramos' future at PSG is in doubt, and the French club could sell the 22-year-old if a suitable offer is made. Fulham in talks to sign Chelsea center back Trevor Chalobah on a 6-month loan deal with an option to buy. Napoli would be interested in Denmark midfielder Pierre-Emile Højbjerg if Spurs decide to sell in January.
I would not take that move. Napoli's a mess.
Mm-hmm. Arsenal leading the race to sign 20-year-old Xavi Simon, who is on loan at RB Leipzig from PSG. They've also been handed a boost in their January pursuit of Bruno Guimaraes, following reports that Newcastle are searching for his replacement, and they got to sell him and come up with a cheaper replacement. That was editorial that I added there at the end. Villa inquired over the potential signing of Borussia Dortmund's Gio Reyna. New agent, Jorge Mendes. Gio Reyna, Aston Villa, don't do it. If I'm Villa, don't do it. Villa have agreed with Red Star Belgrade to sign right back Kosta Nedeljkovic, who's 18. He'll stay in Serbia until next year. Marseille planning to return to make an offer for West Ham's Said Benrahma, who's going to be taking a day off, or at least the next time he's in the FA Cup, considering he got a red card last time out in their loss to Bristol City. First bid was turned down. Manchester United's Amad Diallo set to turn down any championship loans. Ivory Coast Internationals wanted by Michael Carrick at Middlesbrough. Bayern Munich looking to beat Man U to sign Nice defender Jean-Claire Todibo. Also interested in Lens defender Kevin Danso. Radu Dragusin says he turned down a late move to Bayern Munich to join Spurs. Inter Milan close to securing a deal with Iran striker Mehdi Taremi to move to the club on a free after his contract with Porto runs out.
Wow.
Calcio Mercato.
Interesting.
Okay. And then last one on the board, Spurs defender Yafet Tanganga set to end his loan spell at Augsburg, moved to Millwall until the end of the season. And so Yafet Tanganga, when he gets there, can say, blank you, I'm Millwall.
That's right. Still one of the greatest stories of all time.
Blank you, I'm Millwall.
Go 10 toes down
to
knife-wielding terrorists. And your response is, F you, I'm Millwall. That will forever be the just championship level material.
Yes. Championship level material is also Inter and Co Stadium.
Oh my God. Unbelievable.
Oh, Inter and Co Stadium.
The comedy writes itself.
Oh my God. Send us home, because we're going to be laughing for the next 3 hours about this.
Yes. Following up, D Graham. Yes, I know that we have players from Peru and Colombia, but I want more. Okay?
He wants all the Peruvian and Colombian players.
Yes. Yeah,
and he also wants to own a club where he can hire Sebastian Becasese and have him as manager.
Can we all have happy things? It's good to have happy things. And then that with more exciting than Serie A, says Dell. Hey, you know what, Dell?
Uh-oh.
Dell?
Uh-oh.
You may be right.
Oh, wow.
It's okay. It's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind. I don't mind. But with that, just go ahead and understand the things that we learned today, which is if your supervisor puts you on a performance improvement plan, you should immediately get LinkedIn Premium and start hitting that job hunting button with a quickness. Wait. Don't be like, oh my God, how do I turn this around? Go, run,
leave.
Yes.
Find another gig. Find your next gig, but don't be in between jobs, because
yes. Do not wait for them to do the secondary follow-up PIP meeting move. Don't do that. Another thing, be kind to yourselves. Okay. If you end up in those situations, if you end up on a PIP, if you end up, because the economy is kind of wacky, especially in the tech world, people getting let go and laid off, and you go on the hellscape that is LinkedIn, you see a lot of green open to work things on there. Hey, look, it ain't you, baby. It ain't you. Okay. All right. Sometimes we have a hand in that process, but understand that the world has changed. I'll put it that way. And the choices that these people make to make these calls, it ain't your fault, love. Okay? Don't put that on yourself. You don't need that. You're beautiful. You're beautiful and talented and energetic. You got to handle it.
Hit me.
Handle it. So look, be kind to people. You never know what they're going through. And if you have the ability to network, help people out, do those things. And remember that the real world ain't too far terribly different from the sports world. Okay? So the things that are setting some folks back in the real world, setting some folks back in the sports world, keep You head on a swivel, my loves. And until next time, mucha yo.
What he said. Back again, 9:05 tomorrow morning to finish out another week at SDH.